Hello, Algebra 1 students, and welcome back to your Semester 2 final review. Today we're looking at problem 48, which comes from lesson 7.5. I would also argue that this comes later on too. You can also take a look at, I believe, 8.2 if you wanted more for this one. And I can put that up above. 8.2. So what we're going to do is look at two different ways to solve this problem, and I'll kind of split this in half. Okay. The first way is realizing 16x squared minus 49 equals 0 only has a single x in the problem. There are, of course, all sorts of numbers attached to x, which means if there's just one x, we can follow SADMAP. Let's identify everything that's attached to x. There's a 49, which is attached by subtraction. There is a 16, which is attached by multiplication. And there is a 2, which is an exponent. We, of course, work from top to bottom, so we need to undo subtracting 49 by adding it first, like so. This gives me 16x squared equals positive 49. And then my students always try to go out of order here, and I never really understand why. Multiplication comes next, not the square, multiplication. So we're going to go ahead and divide off that 16 from both sides. Now, you might take a look at this and go, I don't know what 16 or 49 divided by 16 is. But take a look at the answers. All of the answers have fractions in them. In fact, some of the fractions are 16 over 49. And so what that tells us, or 49 over 16 for the other, what that tells us then is that we don't want to find the decimal for this fraction. We don't have to do any division. We just keep it as the fraction 49 divided by 16. But we don't stop here, because although we've undone the multiplication, there is still an exponent attached to x. I need to introduce a square root. Squares cancel square roots, and we need to remember that a square root will always have two answers. We need that plus minus out front. Now, how do we actually find the answer to this? Because you'll notice that none of these answers have a square root in front of them. Well, we are allowed to distribute, that scary shortcut, we're allowed to distribute a square root as long as there's only multiplication or division. And there is only division here. So what I'm going to do is distribute the square root to the 49 and distribute to the 16. So to finish this off, the square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 16 is 4. Now we have no more square root, and we have an answer that I believe matches B, 7 over 4. I did promise you two ways to do this. The second way to do this is only if you're pretty confident with factoring. And if you're not, you can at least take a peek. And maybe it'll help you be a little bit more confident with this factoring. I would recognize this very quickly as a difference of squares, where a difference of squares has something with an x squared minus something without an x. And a difference of squares can be put very quickly into factored form. Do you remember how? Because what's going to end up happening is this middle term, the term that normally has an x, cancels. It means that both sets of parentheses are pretty much identical to each other. So we have to think, what times itself is 16x squared? And that's 4x and 4x. You can think of a square root if you wanted. And then what times itself, kind of, is negative 49? Well, that will be a negative 7 and a positive 7. Remember, this is our difference of squares pattern to conjugate binomials. Once we're here, we have put this into factored form and we've made it equal to 0. Well, now we just take each factor and set it equal to 0. And now, solving isn't too bad, right? We subtract 7 from, or add 7 to each side here, subtract 7 from each side on the other, and then we finish off by dividing by 4. 4 doesn't go nicely into 7, so we just keep it as 7 over 4 or negative 7 over 4. And hopefully we can see that that is the same answer as plus minus 7 over 4. So thank you for tuning in. Either one of these is a great way to go to end up solving this equation for x. SADMAP is always nice, but if you remember your factoring, you're like, ooh, that's a difference of squares, that is a great way to go as well. Hopefully this is helping you find success for your Algebra 1 final exam.